Did your God create hell? Yes or no?
She said yes.
Yes.
Okay. Does your God create the rules of the universe, including the criteria by which souls are judged?
Yes.
Does anything happen that doesn't go according to your God's will?
No.
Then your God is ultimately responsible for everything, including the people who he sends to hell.
That is so messed up. I mean,
Yeah, that logic stuff, it's a real pain in the ass, isn't it?
It is messed up, ma'am.
That's an oldie but goodie from the Atheist Experience. Look at babyface Matt. Oh my gosh, he looks so young. The other guy, I can't remember what his name was. And you know, I haven't seen him in years. If you know what he's up to, let me know in the comments. But aside from all that, don't they bring up a great point? That logic stuff is a real pain in the ass for Christians, isn't it? And that's part of the reason why I'm doing today's video. I'm going to be talking about 6 passages in the Bible that defy logical explanation, that kind of helped me leave the faith. They weren't the sole reason. I'll link the video above where I talk about how I finally left the church. But these were the passages that even from when I was a little kid made you go, Let's start in the beginning. Let's start with Genesis. So the first one that got me, especially when I was a little kid, this may have been the very first one, is Genesis 3:14. This is the famous scene where God, curses the snake. So let's read it. So the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life." Now, okay, the snake talked Eve into eating the fruit, so he needs to be punished. However, I was taught that that wasn't a snake, that it was Satan in snake form. Now, I'm a big animal lover. I've always been a huge animal lover, like as far as I know, since the day I was born. So I remember, of course, this passage is read a lot in church. And I didn't understand if this was Satan, or even if Satan was inhabiting a snake's body, why would all snakes be cursed to crawl on their belly, eat dust, and, be crushed by human beings? I didn't understand that, and it still doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all because, think about it, if it was a snake, or a snake, and not Satan, then we have to accept that we have talking snakes in the garden that are as smart or smarter than human beings, able to talk them into, disobeying God. Or we have to assume that the snake was Satan and that God was unjustly punishing the snakes. And I was never able to wrap my head around it, so I would ignore it like a good little Christian does. All right, let's move to Leviticus. So this is Leviticus 21:18 through 21. Now, this isn't one that got read in church a lot, but this is one that I stumbled across when I was reading the Bible like a good little Christian should. So let's read it together. It says, "No man who has any defect may come near. No man who is blind or lame, disfigured or deformed. No man with a crippled foot or hand, or who is a hunchback or dwarf, who has any eye defect, or who has festering or running sores or damaged testicles. No descendant of Aaron the priest who has any defect is to come near to present the food offerings to the Lord. He has a defect. He must not come near to offer the food of his God." Isn't that absolutely horrible? So now not only do we have God being unjust and horrible to snakes, because they couldn't help what happened, that was Satan that did it. Now we have God being unjust and horrible to people that are little people, or are missing a hand or a foot, or any number of ailments that aren't their fault. How is it your fault if you have a blemish? You can't come under the Lord. So someone that was born a little person, they're never able to go to the temple. They're never able to offer food to God. Why? Why would that be? Certainly the God of the universe would know that it's a genetic thing when people are born as little people, or if they're missing hands or feet, or if they got in an accident and they had a foot chopped off, or a hand, or missing fingers, whatever. How awful, how gross is that? It's disgusting. I hated that. I hated it reading that then, and I hate reading it now. Gross. All right, the next one is out of Deuteronomy, and it's 23:2. Let's take a look. No one born of a foreign marriage, nor any of their descendants, may enter the assemblies of the Lord, not even in the 10th generations. Some translations say born out of wedlock. But way to go, God. Way to punish innocent children down to the 10th generation for something that they had no control of. Whether they're born out of wedlock or a forbidden marriage. I guess a forbidden marriage would have been marrying someone outside of the tribe that they were allowed to. I don't know for sure. But it doesn't matter. That's really not the point of it. The point of it is you're punishing up to 10 generations people that had no part of this. Just nasty, just gross. How bad can you be to innocent human beings? It's so disgusting. So does that mean, I guess that brings up the question, you have missionaries, Christian missionaries today that are taking children that were born out of wedlock that are now in the foster care system or they're at orphanages overseas and taking them to church. Is that sinning? Because the law is forever. The law is forever. I wouldn't think God would be very happy about that. Now, if you want to read a good book, there's a book by Steve Wells. I'll put the affiliate link in. Let me read it. It is Drunk with Blood, God's Killings in the Bible. I read this a long time ago. I think you're really going to like it. Remember, I'll make a few pennies if you buy with my affiliate link, but you can buy it anywhere. All right, on to the next one. We're staying in the same book, but now we're moving to 25:2. And I know you guys are going to know this one because this is brought up a lot in the debate shows. If brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. So isn't this just, can you imagine this, especially if you do not like your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law, whether you're a man or a woman? Think about that. Here's a couple of things. Here's a couple of things that crossed my mind when I read it. Number one, what if they hate each other? Which happens quite a bit. What if they hate each other? And they're forced into marrying each other. Isn't that just unjust? And the poor woman has absolutely no agency of her own to go out and find another husband. She has to marry the brother. And my husband has a couple of brothers. He grew up in a huge Catholic family, but he has one brother in particular who I don't like very well. I don't like him. And I would probably have unalived myself had I been forced to marry him and have a child with him. So that just struck me as just disgusting, and I was so glad that we're not under that. Okay, here's another thing that I thought of though. What if this was a Jerry Springer situation where actually the brother-in-law and the sister-in-law were having an affair or they wanted to be with each other? Does it make you wonder if maybe there was a few unalivings happening so that they could be together? You can't tell me that that never happened. I bet it did. Anyway, regardless, it's an unjust law all the way around. Time to move to the New Testament because it's not only Old Testament stuff that made me lose my faith. Let's go to 1 Timothy 2:11. I permit no woman to teach or have authority over men. She is to keep silent. Now that is, I think that's the NIV version. The King James version is even more harsh. It says, let the woman learn in silence with all subjugation. And this is the verse that's been, this is the one that's been used to keep women down. That they cannot preach, they cannot teach over men. This is the one. And I remember being a young girl because, oh boy, in my fundamentalist church, they really loved to harp on this one. In fact, there was a point in time where they were even making us cover our heads. Yeah, I went to that kind of church. There was a time where, well, shouldn't we cover our heads? And that didn't last very long. I can't remember exactly what became of that, but we actually had to cover our heads to come into church, and I don't know, I think someone stopped doing it and then everyone stopped doing it, which just shows you, doesn't that really show you that when it really infringes on people's rights, how they kind of abandon what God says? Because it does say that a woman, it's shameful for her to keep her her head uncovered. So I just thought that was gross. But of course, it all goes back to Eve. Doesn't this all go back to Eve? Eve was the bad one. This gender that Eve was, the female gender, she's the one. So, and that sin has been passed down to every female. That's what I was made to feel like. So just in case, let's keep them all down. If you've stuck around this long, you probably like me, and I love you. I love all of you, but I especially love my members that help me defray the costs of running this channel, because atheist channels don't make any money. We don't make any money. I'm here to tell you advertisers don't like us. So we make very little money. So if you can give me a subscribe, if you can like, if you can comment, if you can boost, whatever you can do to help me defray my costs so I can keep doing this would be amazing. Thanks so much. All right, let's move on to the last one. So the next one is out of Luke. Let's read it. 14:25 through 26. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciples." So apologists will say, and I remember hearing this, that Jesus didn't actually mean to hate. It wasn't hating. It was hating in comparison to Jesus. In other words, you loved Jesus so much and you were so dedicated to him that in comparison, you would hate your mother and father, brothers and sisters, blah, blah, blah. But is that what it says? That isn't what it says. This is the party, this is the group of family values. But does Jesus sound like a family values guy? Is that what he is saying? I think it's so funny that Christians consider them family values when Jesus was not all about family values. And this proves it. So to me, that always tugged at me like, well, we're supposed to be all these family values, but when you actually read, especially the New Testament, Jesus and Paul both really don't want you to marry. They don't want you to be tied to a family. They want you just to be a disciple of Christ. So that always strikes me as weird. And also, isn't that something that a cult leader would say? If David Koresh said this or Jim Jones, you'd be like, cult. But Jesus says it and we just, oh, well, it was hyperbole. He didn't really mean hate or, not have a family. But that's not what it says. I love the way that Christians don't read what the Bible says, because I didn't used to. All right, that's it for today. Those, of course, are not the only verses. Those are not the only ones, but those are the ones that really stuck out at me. And when I really started thinking about the Bible, these are the ones that helped me lose my faith. All right, see you next time.